Welcome to Countdown to Classic, a podcast that educates, informs, and gossips about World of Warcraft Classic. Every Monday and Wednesday, we discuss the news, hot button issues, and content of the highly anticipated World of Warcraft Classic. I'm your host, Josh Corbett, and I'm an avid fan of the vanilla days of World of Warcraft and a podcast veteran. So I figured, why not combine my two passions and bring you this show? However, please remember that as much as I love and adore this game, I am not the go-to authority on all things World of Warcraft. But guess who is? You, the listeners and fans, and that's why this podcast is about you and what you are talking about throughout the week online, as much as it is about this amazing game that we've all come to know and love. I'm just a fanboy of WoW and a mouthpiece for the news and conversations that we're all taking part in online. I try to stay as neutral as possible and present both sides of all of the discussions presented on this show. But just before we get to the good stuff, please do bear with me for a little bit of housekeeping. I just want to let you know that you can find all things Countdown to Classic online at countdowntoclassic.com. More importantly, please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts from, and like, follow, or subscribe to the show on social media. You can find the show on Instagram and Facebook at Countdown to Classic, and on Twitter at Count2Classic with the number 2, and on the show's YouTube channel at Countdown to Classic. One small favor I would ask is that if you're currently listening to the show on YouTube and you're liking what you're hearing, then please do click the download or stream links on the website as well, as I primarily lean on those figures as a look into how the show is growing. Now, as Countdown to Classic is a show about you, the players, this is an interactive experience, and I absolutely want to hear back from you all. So if you have any feedback or input on the show, you can drop me a line on all socials or email feedback@countdowntoclassic.com. This week was absolutely insane, guys. With the drop of the 4th episode, we got over 1,000 downloads in a very, very short period of time. Over 50 countries are now listening to Countdown to Classic, and there's so many shout outs and thank yous that I want to give to everyone that I'm mainly going to save for the end of this episode. But quick shout outs to places like Sweden. I see you all downloading this thing in bulk, and I thank you so much. I've got much more to say at the end, so I hope you stick around. But for now, it's time that I shut up and get to the news with Forum and Fauna. Each week on Countdown to Classic, I trawl the news, forums, and conversations that everyone is having about World of Warcraft Classic and present to you the most relevant topics of the week. The first topic that I want to cover this week is an article that I came across from PCGamesN.com, with the headline being, Vanilla WoW's private servers are expanding despite WoW Classic. Now, much like many of you, I punch in World of Warcraft Classic into Google every day just to see if there's any skerrick of news that might have come our way in the time since I last checked. And obviously most days I am bitterly disappointed. However, this week, this little article came up and I just thought it was rather relevant to what we discuss here on Countdown to Classic in terms of what's going to happen with the landscape of Vanilla WoW once we actually get the official version of World of Warcraft Classic. Now, I'm just going to read you the body of the article, and it goes as follows. You might think that after the announcement of World of Warcraft Classic, private servers running vanilla versions of Blizzard's iconic MMO would call it a day. Far from it. Two of the biggest such projects have announced new servers. Light's Hope, formerly known as Elysium, formerly known as Nostalrius, announced a new server near the end of last month. Kronos, who are quickly emerging as their biggest rival, are due to launch their third server on March 31st. Community vanilla projects were created specifically to cater to nostalgic WoW fans in lieu of official servers. But rather than give up now that those servers are coming, community projects are recommitting. The most obvious reason for this is that WoW Classic is undoubtedly a long way off. It appears the announcement last November came right at the beginning of the development process. This leaves the legacy community in limbo to some degree. It could be that skepticism, as well as impatience, is fueling the legacy community's continuing growth. Now, the reason I bring up this article is I feel like it creates two arguments, and as we do here on Countdown to Classic, we weigh up both sides of the coin and try to have you, the listener, ponder on which you think may be correct. Now, the two arguments that I feel arise here, and this is sort of with the caveat that accepting that private servers are indeed growing rather than declining since the announcement of Classic WoW. One, do you think private servers are growing due to excitement over World of Warcraft Classic? Or two, do you think that these private servers are growing due to a backlash over the lack of news that we're getting from Blizzard on the development, or as a backlash to the waiting time in general? Now, just before we get into the meat of the argument, I do want to touch on the brief history of World of Warcraft private servers. Now, I know a lot of you listening to this podcast may already know a lot about private servers. You may very well be playing on a number of them. Now, some of you may not know what happens with private servers. So I just really want to give everyone either a little bit of a refresher or a history lesson, or educate those people who aren't so sure what I'm talking about. Now, this is going to take about 5 or 10 minutes to go through. By all means, please, if you already know the story, feel free to fast forward about 5 to 10 minutes and join in then. But if you're not sure, or if you want a bit of a refresher, then here we go. Now, in talking about this, and it is a relatively touchy topic, I don't want to rub anyone the wrong way by thinking that I'm promoting the use of private servers and piracy in general. But I also don't live with my head in the sand. And by simply reporting back the facts of what's occurred throughout the history of the game and the legal issues that have arisen due to private server creations over the years, I don't believe I'm crossing the line. If it makes you feel any better with the early success of Countdown to Classic, I'm actually back to supporting Blizz. I renewed my subscription for retail the other day, as I'm planning on actually starting a Twitch account talking Countdown to Classic while leveling a new character through the retail version of the game. But more on that at the end of the show. But look, I have walked around in a private server for a few hours in the past, everyone, and it just, for me personally, it wasn't authentic enough for my liking. And also, it really didn't sit well with me, the concept that my time investment in this game could be taken away from me at any point. With the deletion of a server or things going ass up because of the people who run the server and my obviously having no say in it. But anyway, I just thought it's important to touch on private servers, as they're actually kind of the reason why we're all here. The guys who run the private servers are very much so the driving force as to why WoW Classic is coming. So anyway, here we go. A bit of a history lesson with private servers. Now, private servers have been around almost since the beginning of World of Warcraft itself. There are forum posts online referencing private servers from as early as 2005. But as far as the history of these private servers go, I read a lot online in the last couple of days about the history of private servers, everyone, and I think this particular post really does sum it up best. It's from Reddit user HenHouse0, and I'm going to paraphrase. It's a relatively long one, guys, as you know I am wont to do here on Countdown to Classic, but please bear with me because it's a good one. And it goes as follows. I've been around the scene since 2007, and honestly, most servers were not at all Blizz-like back then. Cores were utter poop and crashed by entering zones or at the slightest thing. There were Blizz-like servers, but I'm certain there was no good scripting at endgame, and there were voluminous bugs. The ones that were online during this time were almost always usually custom gear servers at max level or level 255. Given the fact I can't remember any names besides Wowscape makes me think that there were not really any established servers at the time amassing population, besides this one. It was a simpler time, and everyone accepted the fact that the emulation scene was garbage. But hey, it's not the retail WoW. Cool. Level 255. Whoa. That in and of itself was a neat aspect. Attitudes and desires have shifted dramatically over the past decade. Around the time of Burning Crusade was when servers became more stable and acceptable. This saw the rise of a few big servers. The biggest server at the time had around 1,000 people or so. I didn't play, so my numbers may be off. But it was nothing like today's time. Later on in 2009-2010, I do remember seeing Phoenix relaunch and get big. I played before when it had about 15 people on it. I think I remember getting an email one day asking for people to come back for a play day to help the population. A year later, I noticed the server had 1,000 people online. Wow. I watched the opening of the Anchorage gates on a live stream, and it was so utterly pathetic. The admin was running the server on Windows. Why? And there was no war effort. The lag was unbearably insane, and to open the gates, he just deleted the door object. Didn't even activate it for the cool effect. Just fucking deleted it. Then they announced something like, "Congrats, AQ is open." Vanilla gaming was around this time too, and it was the only server I've seen stand the test of time and just be there for all these years. I have no idea what the quality is. I myself only leveled to 20-something there back in 2010. There was a server around in 2010 running on Ascent called Q Gaming. It offered instant level 60, I think, but made raids super puggable, and people loved this. The honor system was purchased titles. I think this is because the original Q Gaming ran on 2.4.3, but disabled all Burning Crusade content. This wasn't uncommon in the early days, by the way. The 1.12 cores were harder to emulate, and Mangos, the server suite through which the game was run, did not have its vanilla in a good state. Q Gaming relaunched in 2012 on 1.12 as a real leveling experience with 1 to 5 times leveling rates and having it as customizable. I played on release and it was super fun until they realized they had not fixed gold and item duping and decided to wipe the entire server. Within a short time of that, they just deleted the website, closed the server, and haven't come back since. 2012 later saw Gummy's World of Scriptcraft server come into being. It was an instant level 49, I think, server. It was the most promising the community had seen at that time and quickly rose to fame. I don't remember the reasons, but it sadly shut down, then came back later as a new server, closed, and that data eventually went to Valkyrie WoW, now known as Elysium. Before the merge, I could still see my old World of Scriptcraft character on Valkyrie. In 2015, we saw Nostalrius launch to immense success on a level we had never seen before. A well-done professional project that grew quickly due to its quality and vision. Newcomers to the private server scene may have been introduced to servers like Nostalrius and assumed that they were all like that, which was a huge mistake. Nostalrius gained its fame due to being the first of its kind to really accomplish many of the things it did. I suppose you really probably know the rest from here. Now, that was a bit of a long one, everyone. I do apologize for that, but it was a really, really good, succinct history of private servers that we've had up to now. Now, you just heard the name Nostalrius, and for those of you who don't know, from the wiki page, Nostalrius was a private World of Warcraft server, which opened on February 28th, 2015. The server ran patch 1.2 and catered to aficionados of the early version of the game, nicknamed Vanilla, obviously. It was one of the most successful private servers to date, with over 800,000 accounts registered, of which 150,000 were active. Stating breach of copyright, Blizzard Entertainment issued the administrators of the server a cease and desist letter, and so the Nostalrius servers were shut down on April 10th, 2016, leading to an outcry on Facebook and Twitter and large-scale coverage in mainstream computing journalism. After a month or so of large-scale protests, Blizzard invited the Nostalrius team to the Blizzard headquarters to present the case for Vanilla. An 80-page post-mortem document describing the development of Nostalrius, the problems that happened, and some marketing strategies was presented to Blizzard, and after some time released on the Nostalrius forums. In the following 6 months, Blizzard did not respond at all to any communication from the Nostalrius team. J. Allen Brack and the World of Warcraft development team announced they would not be making any statements about Vanilla at the 2016 BlizzCon convention. Consequently, the Nostalrius team released their source code to Valkyrie WoW, another long-standing private Vanilla WoW server, hosted in Russia, and the Nostalrius servers returned on December 17th, 2016 under the name of the Elysium Project, with the player database as it had been just before shutdown in April. In October of 2017, the Elysium servers were taken offline when it had been revealed that some staff had been involved in gold selling and character manipulation, which went against the Blizz-like philosophy the team purportedly stood for. Now, this resulted in whatever you believe happened from here. There are stories that someone ripped off someone else, there was cash involved. Another person stole the database and moved it to a new server. Anyway, there is a general feeling of distrust of private servers amongst the World of Warcraft Classic community. But people usually don't really care that much when they're getting free stuff, so they don't kick up too much of a stink. But there is a little bit of a negative feeling towards the private servers, even though a lot of us do happily indulge in what they're putting on for us. If you're wondering what the details of the shenanigans were, this post from Pseudo Evil on the WoW Classic subreddit probably sums it up best when they say, Elysium has stolen donation money for their own personal use, sold gold, and sold geared characters out of thin air. The entire economy is fucked and there's no more integrity left to the server. Light's Hope was the same database with the same lack of integrity, but was stolen by the current operators. Operators who have been confirmed gold sellers and selling hacks or exploits in the past. Plus, one or more GM who abuses their power and completely ruins what little integrity the staff has. Now, some of you may know a lot more about that than me. I'm just pulling that off the subreddit. Now, obviously, that can be a dangerous thing to do, but there seem to be a few posts that backed up exactly what Pseudo Evil was saying there, so maybe that is the case of what happened. If you say otherwise, please do email the show and let me know. So now, the bigger private servers that we have going are Kronos, Light's Hope, and Elysium, as I understand it. So that's where we are now, everyone. And obviously, I must mention again that with all the work put in by all of these private servers, that's why we're here today with World of Warcraft Classic coming to us that we're all so excited about. Now, going all the way back to the actual news story that I mentioned at the start, thank you so much for bearing with me through that long history of private servers, but I felt it was important to touch on all of that. It seems to be the case that not only are the private servers that we have today doing just fine, but they're actually launching new servers in a post-World of Warcraft Classic announcement world. Now, this could be for a number of reasons. It could mainly be to relaunch new servers, relaunch the experience for some users, let people go through the patch experience all over again, and obviously you get the drips and drabs of patch releases and the content gets flowed out to people. Or it could be purely due to population booms and having the need for more servers. But what does all of this mean for World of Warcraft Classic, the official version? Aren't these servers supposed to go the way of the dodo now that we're actually getting this? Or at the very least, aren't they supposed to perhaps go away upon launch? Why would people be playing them now more than ever when we know that they may cease to exist when Classic comes? As I mentioned at the top, there are two arguments in place here that I'm posing to you. The first being that people are playing out of excitement or in training for World of Warcraft Classic and ignoring the retail version to do so. Or, secondly, more people than ever are playing private servers as an FU to Blizz for leaving us in the dark since announcement. In saying that, obviously I'm referencing the amount of people that seem to have been rubbed the wrong way by Blizzard dropping this bomb on us and now months later having said nary a word about it. So as we do here on Countdown to Classic, everyone, we turn to the forums and get the pulse of the players and see what you are all saying about this particular issue. Now, the first point I bring you is from the second camp, being that people are playing private servers now as an FU to Blizz. These are 3 posts in a row from the WoW Classic subreddit, and the first user is For Echo, who says, "That only makes sense. Blizz announced Classic, built up a ton of hype, then fucked off. People want Classic, and right now. Private servers are the only way to get that." And then the next one from Finn and Hawk says, "Pretty much this. Knowing how long it takes for Blizzard to develop things and taking into account the fact that this time they actually admitted that it will take a long time instead of saying soon, I wouldn't expect the Classic WoW servers to appear for at least 1.5 years. People have to do something with the hype Blizzard built with that announcement." And the third post from Poopty Pants says, "I don't even think it's just necessarily that. They announce Classic and then there is radio silence for months and months. There's been like one interview that gave 0 new information. If they could just communicate with the community and give us the smallest, slightest update, it might satiate our hunger a little. Sure, there would be those that are ravenous and would play private servers, but there are plenty of people waiting for Classic that aren't playing, and the longer they have to wait for news, the higher the chances that they just might turn to a private server." So the point that these 3 posts are bringing up are essentially, Blizz, you announced this game, you got us all hyped up, and then you slunk away into the shadows without saying another word. I mean, it was really kind of, you talk about, sorry to sound crude, but the ultimate dick tease, because what are we supposed to do other than turn to private servers in a moment like this? Now, people really are getting quite upset on a lot of the forums about the more and more time that's passing by without Blizzard saying a word about World of Warcraft Classic. As those posts mentioned, yes, we got the J. Allen Brack interview from a little while ago, but some people feel that it really didn't tell us much else that we got outside of the announcement itself. And it's in this void of a lack of information that people are now starting to get quite antsy. We're all scratching at our arms like junkies, wondering where this fix is coming from. And what's sitting right there? Oh, a free fix? Private servers? Okay, sure, I'll just take that if you're not going to tell me anything about the official version or when it's coming my way. So what these posts are really saying is it's more like a bit of a backlash towards Blizzard, even though we all love and adore Blizzard for giving us the game that we've all come to worship. But the manner in which they have conducted this announcement really has rubbed some people the wrong way. And so they will continue to pirate their game in a little bit of defiance until we get to know more. Now, the next couple of posts I'll bring you are in the other camp, in that it's not an FU to Blizzard. We're playing private servers just because we're so damn excited. This is awesome. World of Warcraft Classic is coming. I want to check it all out again. And this first post comes from a user called Darth Charizard, who says, I started doing private servers because I couldn't survive the hype when Classic was announced. But once there's a Blizzard option, I will immediately switch to that. Cinnamon Thief replies, same here. When Classic came out, the hype got ridiculously high. I was also worried I was wearing rose-tinted glasses and would end up paying for a product I no longer loved. I decided to try out a private server to satiate my hype and make sure I still loved the game. I confirmed that I do love the game. As soon as Classic is out, I'm switching to that. As a bonus, I now also have a rough idea of what I'd like to play, what I want to do, and what professions I'd like to learn. That's an interesting point, that obviously these couple of posters here would reflect some of the feelings of a lot of you listening, in terms of you were just so damn excited to get WoW Classic back into your lives that the first knee-jerk reaction was actually, ironically, to jump on an unofficial private server just to see that world again and just to see what was coming back your way in an official aspect at some point in the future. And it might be something like, as the last poster points out, wanting to maybe train yourself a little bit. Remind yourself, which class do I really want to roll with WoW Classic? It's going to take quite the time sink, so I want to make sure I get this right. Do I really want to be a tank? Maybe I want to try a healer this time. I've never done that before. Things like that. What professions do I want to learn? What race do I want to roll? What kind of areas do I want to level up in this time around? Questions like that are all things that will be high in our minds now, and something you very may well want to turn to a private server to try out as a bit of a dry run before Classic comes. The next point I bring you is again to the FU camp, where user League Sky says the following. Classic is something I'll believe when I see. Until then, there is no real reason for servers to slow down or for people to stop playing them, especially with all the vanilla hype combined with no word from Blizzard. Now, this one brings up a bit more of an interesting point, because League Sky sort of makes it sound from that opening statement that, would perhaps Blizzard scrap this project? Now, I know a lot of you just had a heart attack when I said that, but that's kind of what this user is posing, is I'll believe it when I see it, when I can actually purchase it, when I can actually jump into this world officially from Blizzard, then I'll believe it's happening. Until then, no dice. We've waited many, many years for this. This is all just talk. And frankly, we have seen Blizzard walk away from things before, i.e. Project Titan. They've got form for that, so stranger things have happened. I'm not of the belief that Classic would controversially perhaps never come our way. I do think we're absolutely getting this, but I do also accept from Blizzard that this is a far greater assignment than many people are led to believe. Obviously, the vast majority of, well, perhaps not the vast majority, but a lot of people online are saying, we don't understand why this isn't available now. The game already exists. But as Blizzard have already stated, they really are trying to have the game run on more modern platforms. Thus, there is a boatload of work being put in by the devs to have a 14-year-old game run successfully in 2018 or 2019 or 2020 or, I don't want to say any more. It just might make me upset. The next point I bring you is back to the excitement crowd, but this was from a different thread titled, I can't take it anymore. I want to play Classic but don't want to put the time into a private server. And that post was from a user named Solo Loser, but the replies are what I want to look at here. The first reply comes from a user named Bosomtwee, who says the following. I leveled a Warlock to 58 on Light's Hope after the announcement. I already had a 60 on Elysium. I am completely burned out. I don't think I'll be playing when the live servers come either. So yeah, save your appetite. And a reply from user Skin Thinner. This is definitely my fear. I hopped on Light's Hope for a bit, nostalgia'd, had a good time, but thankfully, I guess, I couldn't really get into it because I knew these characters would be temporary for one reason, and I was worried about the burnout. So I'm saving my appetite, but damn am I hungry. This brings up a really interesting point, and it's sort of a case of, with these users, premature vanillation, if you will. Because I must admit that personally, I was partially afraid of this after the announcement and in regards to private servers and why I have been basically staying away from them. I really didn't want to, and again, pardon me for being crude, everyone, shoot the proverbial wad a little too soon. The reason being, I still wanted to scratch an itch, but I didn't want to do so in a way that would make me feel like I'd just played the game and why would I want to do it all again? If I were to jump on a private server and say, oh, maybe I'll try a warrior out and see if I want to do that when WoW Classic comes out. Then I sort of enjoy myself, take that warrior all the way through to 60, have spent a fuckload of time on a private server. Then WoW Classic comes around, I'm like, I've just kind of done this. Like, maybe I'll walk away for a little while and come back later. Like, I would die if I felt that way. I want to keep myself wanting WoW Classic. How do I do that? Well, personally, I've decided to dive back into retail. Now, I know a lot of you feel that might be heresy in a way, but I don't really like to slander retail players or slander Classic players. We're all one and the same at the end of the day. But in terms of me jumping back into retail, here's the benefits of that. I still get to play the game again in a certain form. I still get a little bit of a Warcraft hit. But in leveling a character up through retail and sort of reminding myself about everything that made me fall in love with World of Warcraft, I'm doing so within the new retail environment with all of the quality of life changes and there's a lot of really major changes that have come into the game in the last few years that make it deviate so much from what I'm presuming we're going to be getting with World of Warcraft Classic that when I go through it all again with World of Warcraft Classic, it will actually feel like a different game. I hope some of you are sort of picking up what I'm putting down is that even though I've made the decision to go all the way through retail again, I feel like I'll still get a different experience with WoW Classic. But if I do that on a private server, I'm sort of just doing what I'll get with WoW Classic. So it kind of feels like I'm doubling up and won't be as much fun. By the way, guys, all that leveling up that I just mentioned, I am planning on starting a Twitch channel in the next week, so I'll keep you posted with news on that if you want to come and hang out on Twitch and have a chat about all things Countdown to Classic while I play retail. Moving on to the next post. Back to the FU camp, and it's Daddy Gold who says the following. I personally just started an account on a private server since it was obvious that we weren't going to get Classic anytime very soon. There are plenty of things that Blizzard needs to do to get it right, and feedback that they must listen to and adjust to where they feel appropriate. Why did I start an account on a private server? So I don't make a complete ass of myself shifting from Legion to Classic. They are very nearly two totally different games. I am prepping for the real deal. Once Classic goes live, I will switch over and be more than happy to pay a subscription fee to do so. The major drawback of a private server is that basically, at any moment, all of your hard work goes poof because Blizz has shut them down. I did Wailing Caverns last night. Holy jeez, I thought it would be different. But of course, the DPS warrior was thunderclapping CC'd mobs, and another warrior DPS thought he was awesome and could solo mobs himself instead of focusing down one target at a time. Classic/vanilla isn't an AoE fest like retail, SMH. Now, Daddy Gold again brings up a point that we've heard before. Basically, I'm doing private servers because Blizzard's conduct post-announcement makes it clear we're not getting this anytime soon. However, the second point is, why would I want to go back to retail to get my hype fix? They're completely different games. And yes, in the last 2 days in my mucking around in retail again, I haven't played World of Warcraft in years, guys. I walked away for about the last 5 or 6 years, I think it is. And just 2 days ago, I renewed my subscription, obviously with my excitement with this podcast and wanting to get a lot more information on the game if I'm going to bring you more information on it going into the future. And can I tell you, holy shit, I had no idea how different things were. I left the game when Kata came out, and that's how I remembered it. Shit done changed, everyone. But, I mean, that's part and parcel, I guess, of why people have been griping online a lot about the changes that have gone through over the years, and why people like you who are listening to this podcast are so keen to go back to the way things were. They are completely different games. So I understand that a lot of you don't want to get your hype fix through the retail version. Now, that's what I've chosen to do just because I want to get my hype fix in some way. But obviously, horses for courses. The final point I want to bring you on this first topic is again from a different thread, and this was from Reddit user Fuzi on a thread titled Thoughts of a Former Private Server Community Member. Now, this was a long, really well thought out, really excellently written post by Fuzi. I'm just going to bring you one paragraph from it, but I do encourage you to go and read this thread if you have the time. But the part I want to bring you is this, and here's Fuzi's words. The majority of the private server community were excited, even giddy, at the thought of finally being able to return home. While a lot of people see us as pirate players or pirate servers, you'll find a lot of this community is thankful to finally have an option that's maintained professionally, away from the potential abuses that private servers are fraught with. For years, we've been at the whims of those who frequently acted with ulterior motives or a flagrant disrespect for the communities they curated. While there are private server communities that will carry on business as usual once Classic releases, these communities do not represent the people that are engaged in trying to make Classic WoW the best that it can be. That's a fantastic post to go out on for this first topic. And the point there basically is that some people are on private servers now because they're excited and they love this game. However, they do want stability, and they can't wait to jump ship to the official version and support the people who actually gave us this thing in the first place that became such a big part of our lives. It really is lovely to hear that there are members of that private server community who are ready, willing, and able to throw the wallets back at Blizzard, support the official game, get on board with the community, and dive into a world that will have the security and framework in place to deliver you the best possible World of Warcraft experience that you can get. Now, I do understand that there will be some people that aren't happy with the version of World of Warcraft Classic that we're going to get, and they will stay on these private servers saying that no, the private servers are the ones who are in the right. They get it. Blizzard doesn't. Blizzard is perverting our nostalgia with what they've brought us here. But we can't tell what we're going to get. And as Fuzi points out, in playing on a private server, you are leaving your character to the whims and motives of people who have had their dedication to the cause, so to speak, questioned quite a bit in the past due to some of their actions. So it is a kind of a buyer beware situation. But that's private servers, and I just thought that was an interesting topic to lead off with this week, as literally it was the only thing in the news about World of Warcraft Classic this week. Moving on to the second topic now, and outside of the news, Countdown to Classic also brings you the hottest forum posts of the week through the WoW Classic subreddit and the WoW Classic official forums. Now, this particular post caught my eye as it really heated heated up this week, and it was a post that could be found on the WoW Classic official forums titled, "Battleground Queuing Only at Battleground Entrance." This post has now picked up a lot of comments, and the original poster, Eagle's Gift, writes the following. While inconvenient, having to trek to the battleground entrance was part of the vanilla experience for me. I enjoyed hanging out with teammates while we waited for the queue to pop. You had to be wary of being ganked as you sat about waiting. Then, if your team chose to go to a different battleground, there was the long journey to get there. Make battleground instances feel like an integral part of the overall world. Now, I must admit, everyone, I had no idea about this. I started playing Vanilla WoW around patch 1.9, and Battlegrounds were introduced in patch 1.5. About 5 weeks later, with patch 1.6, the Battleground system was changed considerably with the introduction of Battle Masters. Now, this Battle Master system was all I ever knew with my experience with Vanilla. I wasn't there from the inception, so I missed obviously the first few patches and the actual introduction of Battlegrounds. And I had no concept that at a certain point in time, we didn't actually just rock up to Battle Masters to go to Battlegrounds, that you actually had to go physically to the place, travel there if you wanted to take part in the battleground. That's kind of amazing. Like, I was like, wow, that's a really interesting wrinkle. And obviously I felt very stupid for not having known that. And every single one of you listening to this podcast is going, come on, Josh, get with it. That's absolutely how it was. And that's why all of you are much bigger experts on this game than I, and why this show is about you and not me. But I found it interesting that with this post, people are now calling for even little things that were in some version of vanilla, albeit for a very short period of time. And now we've gotten to a stage where we're at a bit of a crossroads, and people are saying, well, I want to now pick and choose which parts of vanilla I want in Classic WoW. And there's no real right or wrong to this, but it's just a bit of an interesting rabbit hole that we go down here. And it really fascinated me with the details that this community looks at when it thinks about Classic WoW, and it's what makes this community so amazing. And like I said, this thread absolutely blew up, so people are obviously quite invested in this, even though it seems like such not a minor thing, but not one of the bigger changes that people are talking about with regards to Classic WoW. But if you're like me and you have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about because you're thinking that Battlegrounds always happen by way of Battle Masters, originally when Warsong Gulch and Alterac Valley were introduced into the game in patch 1.5, you had to actually hoof it there. The Warsong Gulch entrance could be found in the Northern Barrens near the Morshan Rampart for Horde, and south of Silverwing Outpost in Ashenvale for the Alliance. For Alterac Valley, those entrances could be found east of Sephira's Naze in Alterac for the Horde, and in the headlands of Alterac for the Alliance. So, with regards to this particular post, again, we're going to boil it down to two different arguments. The first being pro-Battle Masters, and the second being anti-Battle Masters in terms of let's have it as it was originally, with you actually having to run to the battleground. Now, the first post I bring you is for the anti-Battle Masters argument, and this comes from user Ratsmats, who says the following. I also agree. I hope that Battle Masters are not added to Classic. So many people want to be able to sit in a nice safe corner of a capital city, click a button on their mouse, wait for the game to form a group for you, even if the members of that group are all from different servers, and then be teleported to the instance. Now, what is the PvE equivalent that allows players to sit in a nice convenient corner of a capital city, click a mouse button, wait for the game to form a group for them, even if the members of that group are all from different servers, then be teleported to the instance? That sounds a lot like LFD to me. Now, the point that Ratsmats is obviously raising there is, I like the cheeky way that they've brought that up, is that so many of us are against the LFD tool or any kind of automation in terms of forming groups or cross-server groups in terms of PvE, yet we're also happy to accept it for PvP, when we actually had a moment in time when it wasn't necessarily there. They argue essentially that the quality of life benefit that a Battle Master added actually also was a detriment to the game in that it took away the world PvP excitement by keeping everyone safe inside a city when they wanted to queue for a battleground with the Battle Master. It actually took away from the danger of the journey to the battleground and then standing at the gates of the battleground. They also might be suggesting that it took away from the community aspect of things in terms of potentially seeing other PvPers on your way to the battleground. Obviously, you might get in the habit of recognizing names, recognizing players' looks, and being like, oh God, there's that guy that killed me yesterday. I might want to get him again or something like that. But it is, I mean, again, I'm wrapping my head around all this for the first time because I didn't even know this was a thing until today. But it's an interesting point that they raise. Now, the reply and the pro-Battle Master argument starts with a user called Apocalypse, who says this: "It won't happen. I actually loved it because crazy action happened around those entrances. This issue, however, is that it impacts the areas they're in, which are lower level zones, and levelers get squashed. It also limited participation, which was already a serious problem as battle groups weren't added until late Classic. I can envision ways that would promote the return of travelling to battleground entrances, but it would require major changes on various fronts in the game, and I doubt Blizzard is willing to take that direction. Something like allowing low-level players the ability to compete against high levels, much like current retail is doing, which would also help resolve the major drawback to the honor system, would help, but this would be categorized as a major change, and I'm not sure Blizzard is willing to go in that direction. Frankly, we have no information at all on the direction Blizzard is going, so I'm leaning on the side of minimal changes until I hear otherwise." The point that Apocalypse is raising is that you have to remember that in the pre-Battle Master era, this very, very brief period in time, being about 5 weeks when you had to run to the battleground, it actually resulted in a lot of lobies being griefed in a way because the battlegrounds were placed in leveling areas and not high leveling areas, but kind of low to mid-range leveling areas. So a lot of people just trying to play the game and get their character, oh yay, 26, here I come. We're getting ganked by all these high-level PvPers running to their battlegrounds. So maybe that's why Blizz removed it so quickly from the game. But the other point that they raise is that in terms of participation, perhaps Blizz was concerned that they weren't getting many people to the battlegrounds, and certainly not as many as they had hoped, because the travel aspect might have been a deterrent to a lot of players going, well, fuck that, I'm not running all the way to battlegrounds, I got better things to do. But with the fewer and fewer people perhaps going to battlegrounds when they realized how they had to get to them, Blizz obviously might have devised a very quick solution in terms of, well, we'll just basically bring the battlegrounds to you. Which would make sense because it's kind of like, why create the content if no one is actually going to go and see it? Nax. Cough, Nax. You know what I mean. We move back to the anti-Battle Master argument with a user called Zerash, and they say the following: "As much as I have trolled Battle Master threads in the past, I've decided to turn over a new leaf and actually be a member of what I hope can become a healthier community for WoW Classic. I'm actually of the opinion that the arguable inconvenience of having to walk to the areas where the battlegrounds reside was an acceptable inconvenience that supported the sentiment of a cohesive and immersive world. The only real issue I have with the battleground entrance areas is the fact that low-leveled characters interested in participating in battlegrounds may frequently have to deal with many high-level characters in the area in order to even queue for a battleground where they can fight other similarly leveled opponents. However, as most players who really enjoy the game end up reaching level 60 anyways, so that they can essentially enter an environment where the roles are reversed, they are now the high-level characters in the area, the problem only really persists for twinks. So, the argument is, was it really only twinks that had to worry about being the lower-level players that were getting ganked? I'd love to hear from some of you, and if you have any memories in this patch 1.5 to 1.6 era. Were you running battlegrounds as twinks? Were you a low-level player just trying to level in the area and having all your shit messed up by all these high-level players? But I do just wonder whether the low-level players that people are talking about seeing in the area were just twinks actually running to the battlegrounds, so they maybe wouldn't have been as upset with getting ganked because they were going to go PvP anyway. I don't know. It's an interesting argument to think about. We move back to Pro Battle Masters with a couple of posts from user Jesteri, who says this. So we've gone from hashtag no changes to, well, that wasn't a good part of vanilla. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Battle Masters were a part of vanilla since 1.6. And the next post from Jesteri. This is beautiful. The hashtag no change crowd that was so resilient toward changes suddenly now wants to change a part of classic WoW. Whenever other changes are suggested, they're dismissed. We want 100% vanilla. Well, you're going to get 100% vanilla, and that includes the Battle Masters. Besides, Battle Masters allow me to actively engage the community in trade chat. I couldn't engage the community sitting with the elite guards at the AV entrance. Now, this is the rabbit hole that I was sort of mentioning earlier and hoping not to dive down too far, but it is a good point that this user brings up, and that's in the eternal changes versus no changes debate that we're caught up in at the moment. There are even changes within vanilla itself that we are arguing about. And this is an interesting one because both were in vanilla in some way, one just for a month and another for far longer. So is it even a changes versus no changes argument, or is it just arguing for which iteration of vanilla did you prefer? If both were in and you argue for no Battle Masters, are you a pro-changes person? How ridiculous are we getting with the discourse about what should be in and what shouldn't? And obviously you can ask, how is this podcast helping by even talking about such craziness? Hey, don't shoot the messenger. I don't decide what blows up on the forums. But it is something to ponder on there, where within vanilla itself, there were obviously multiple changes that happened before we got Burning Crusade. Things were improved even back then. So, when we talk about I want Classic as it was, which version of Classic are you talking about? Some people highlight specific patches and say, have all the UI and all the bugs from this particular patch. And there might be merit to certain patches, but look, we're going to get what we're given at the end of the day, everyone. And I do think it's interesting that we sit here and argue about things like this. But this is still, no doubt, a big question for Blizzard. Battle Masters or no Battle Masters. Now, some of you may think it's a far easier decision than it should be, but we'll see. We go back to the anti-Battle Master people with this post from user Dacus, who says, I have stated that multiple times, so thank you for repeating me. World PvP was wonderful before Battlegrounds. The addition of Battlegrounds without Battle Masters was also great for World PvP. And furthermore, the change to Battlegrounds and World PvP in general by adding Battle Masters in the cities was a negative addition to the concept of PvP as a whole in WoW. Try to stay focused on what we're talking about here. I have repeatedly argued why the change of allowing the player base to queue up in cities is unbecoming of the original vanilla experience that a lot of us experienced firsthand. We missed that. I played this game before Battlegrounds came out, so yeah, I know, and many others did as well. That is what we're arguing for here. Now, the point that this user is making, and this really is getting quite interesting now. So, apparently, if you're asking for Battle Masters, are you part of the changes crowd by default? Because that was a change that was made to vanilla and not how it was originally. I have to admit, I'm getting so confused now, and this is kind of like trying to figure out a Zelda timeline or something like that. All right, so it's interesting that there are a number of people out there that genuinely enjoyed running to Battlegrounds, and I think that's kind of cool that there are people advocating for both sides. But the last point I'm going to bring to you is this very strong one, and it's a little bit of a long one, from user Ernie Meiser. And Ernie Meiser says the following. Ask yourselves this question. Do you want all three battlegrounds, Alterac Valley, Arathi Basin, and Warsong Gulch, to be included in Classic? Here's a timeline. Battlegrounds came into the game in 1.5, Battle Masters in 1.6, change in levels came in 1.8 for AV, dropping them down to level 10. AB started at level 10. If you said yes, you want all three battlegrounds, then the answer to whether Battle Masters stay or not is a moot point. They have to stay. Why? I don't recall the exact levels in vanilla in zones since they keep changing the blasted things, but I know that Arathi Highlands and Hillsbrad Foothills were both over level 10. Yet, both have levels starting at level 10. Yes, one was changed later, but one started at level 10. So, with that settled via patch notes and timelines, even if only due to the one starting at level 10 and you want all three included, I want all three battlegrounds to be in, and yes, I would like Battle Masters as well. I enjoyed Battlegrounds a lot back in those days, and I remember standing at the Battle Master in Ironforge many a day in a queue for a battleground, but I also remember going straight to the entrances just as much. Either way, it didn't matter to me when it came to enjoying battlegrounds. What hindered my enjoyment of them was when that stupid junk started where you would go in one and there would be a group pre-made that you got in with that wanted a losing battleground. They demanded you never left the loading in area so you could lose faster, thereby gaining honor points quicker than the other side. Argue that one all you want, it makes no damn sense. So yes, include all three, make them level 10 up for the two that were, and for crying out loud, make pre-made losing battleground groups a bannable offense. There was nothing that hampered the fun more than that junk. Now, I think one of the things that Ernie Meiser raises there is that perhaps there are bigger fish to fry than the Battle Masters versus no Battle Masters argument. There are other issues with the battlegrounds that maybe we do need to hope are addressed by Blizzard. Changes versus no changes. How does Blizzard deal with that? And obviously the change that this person is calling for is things like hammering people who do things like pre-made losing battleground groups, making that a bannable offense. I must admit, my experience, and I'm sure many of you, jumped in a battleground from time to time and did see this. I remember back in the day being left absolutely scratching my head as to why I was being admonished for wanting to, battle in the battlegrounds. People would say like, stop, just stop. We're not doing anything. We're losing. We need the honor points. We're going to go away. When we come back, we'll do it all again. It just made no sense to me. And I always did really get a little bit upset when that happened. And this user is saying ban people for that, or at least do something temporary where they can't go to battlegrounds. And perhaps there are more changes that Blizzard needs to take on board. And perhaps that's what they are taking on board. Who knows? Now, the final topic I want to take on for the week was a post on the Classic WoW subreddit that was titled, "I'm Sorry Guys," and posted by user Tips Out. Now, for those of you who might not be aware, Tips Out is a content creator on YouTube for WoW vanilla material. He puts up some quality videos there, and a lot of people are aware of his work. Some people may not be if you're not a big YouTuber or if you're busy watching other content creators, I understand. However, within the Classic WoW subreddit community, Tips Out is relatively well known. And so his post titled, "I'm Sorry Guys," caught some eyes, and it read as follows. And just know, guys, that I'm just taking excerpts from this post and I'm paraphrasing, so I'm just getting to the crux of it. And it starts with this. "To all those who supported me thus far, I'm sorry. You have my everlasting love. Please know I wish this day never had to come. Yesterday morning, me and 8 of my cohorts were informed by our employer that due to financial reasons, he would be slowing down his operation. For the first time in years, I am unemployed. Things aren't the way they used to be. I'm no longer 18. I have a family now. I have obligations. I have to pay rent. I wish I had just a little bit more time. A little more time to grow the channel and start streaming. But life waits for no one. Unless some miracle happens over the course of the next few days, I'll be required to dedicate my full physical and mental being towards finding a job and building my reputation with my future employer. That means YouTube videos and social media will have to be put on hold. Until when, I don't know. All I know is that I am financially compromised at the moment and I cannot focus on extracurricular activities until my finances and family's minds are at peace." So basically what happened here was one of the more beloved WoW content creators decided to retire for a short period of time because obviously life gets in the way. He'd lost his job. He needed to focus on other things. These things happen. Now, the outpouring of support and love from the WoW Classic subreddit in response to this post was astonishing. And even to Tips, he commented on it later. But if you go through it, there's obviously a boatload of really lovely, well-wishing posts. And eventually Tips updated the post with the following. Thank you all for the love and support. I haven't responded to many comments because I'm honestly speechless. The classic WoW community truly is the best community there is. After much counsel from dear friends, family, and other streamers and content creators, I've made a decision regarding my next step. I will post a video update to you all by the end of the day today. Right now I just need to sleep as I haven't slept in 30 hours. Love you all from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, Tip. Now, I should say that this post was put up on March the 6th. Now, I also need to qualify this whole portion of the show covering this bit of news because I need you all to know that I don't know Tip from a bar of soap. I've just enjoyed his videos over the past few months along with some of you. I reached out to him when I started this podcast after he posted a video encouraging potential content creators to give him a buzz. And he got back to me with a very polite, encouraging short message along the lines of "Go get 'em, Tiger," which really did help me push this pod out. But since this news broke, I reached out to Tip again, saying sorry about what happened and that I'm sure the community would love to know more about what's going on with him, and that I'd love to have him on this show to talk about what he's comfortable talking about in relation to what's happened. And he responded to me when I can only imagine how many better things he has to do at the moment, getting it back to a guy like me just looking for an interview. But again, he was super polite, and he did indicate that he would be keen to come on this show at some point when things got less hectic for him. Finally, I decided to get in touch with him again at the last minute about this story that you're hearing right now being featured in this particular podcast, and was hoping to have him on for today or grab a comment or two. But I haven't heard back from him, and I needed to record and publish this ASAP. So unfortunately, Tip couldn't be on this episode, but I'm hoping potentially he might appear on a show later down the track. So he might have to wait another few weeks if he does agree to come on at some point, which would make me, and I'm guessing a lot of you, ecstatic, because I feel like a lot of you would like to hear from Tip. And I know I do want to talk to him about content creation and also vanilla WoW, and get some really interesting points there. Tip has indicated that he's heard the show and he very much so might be interested in appearing in the future. But I just wanted to say that because I want you all to know that there's no friendly favoritism here. I exchanged a couple of messages with the guy. I'm just a fan in general. We're not mates. So the story flows on from here. After this outpouring of support on the WoW Classic subreddit, which again was pretty epic, it was pretty impressive to see, many people were understanding that he has to get his affairs in order, the importance of looking after one's family, blah, blah, blah. A lot of people got in touch with Tip and said, start a Patreon account. We will pledge $1, $10, $20, $50 a month. A lot of people were saying this to Tip. We'll give you the money. Your content is worth it. But a few interesting comments popped up from users who reported back that another well-known YouTube content creator, Alex Sensual, had mentioned during a stream after Tip's post went up that perhaps Tip was doing this as a ploy to possibly get hired by Blizz or build up some sympathy for a possible move to Patreon. A lot of that was poo-pooed by people, and many people got behind Tip saying, no, this is not the case. Alex Sensual is just keeping up a bit of animosity that he's got going on with Tip, and that there's nothing to that, apparently. Tip resurfaced on March 8 on his YouTube channel, and he announced that he was indeed going to go the Patreon route. And as far as this Patreon account goes, I highly recommend you go over to Patreon and check out Tips's page. The reason being that he's got a lot of good stuff to offer, and also check out his YouTube page if you haven't already, because he's got a lot of great videos on there, everyone. And again, there was a lot of mostly positive buzz to this, but there was some negative buzz again via a strange amount of dislikes proportion-wise on that particular video. And I'll just take you to a few of the comments from Tip's YouTube page, which says the following from user Dirty Harry. Alex was right all along. User Daniel Jackson. Seems Alex Sensual was right about you. Then we got this comment from Just R, who says, extracting money from those who have to earn it in the beast system, society, by making WoW Classic content, especially when it seems like you barely play the game yourself, is quite frankly sad and will not prove to be healthy for you in the long run. Tip jumped on and replied to that, and notably took the high road, saying, hey man, I appreciate the feedback. I love this game more than you can possibly imagine. It's why I've played it for 13 years. And he goes on to say some other stuff, but I do love that he took the high road there, and I must admit it's something I can sympathize with, because a lot of my early interactions now on the forums, there are times when you do have to take the high road, and it's so easy to want to go and just get in a mudslinging match with people. But I think the maturity and reason will really stand the test of time in the end when you're trying to argue with someone about something. But I do find it interesting, Just R1's comment about Tip seeming to never actually play the game, because Tip never struck me as someone who doesn't know anything about the game. His videos are quality and detailed, and I think it's really bizarre to suggest that someone who is releasing heaps of videos on a very regular basis on Classic WoW content doesn't actually know anything about the game, when he's sitting there giving you some pretty intricate details on things about vanilla. Now, you might ask, why am I bringing all this up? I don't see anything wrong with content creators going the Patreon route. Apparently, some people do online, and those people have obviously voiced their displeasure on the forums and via dislikes and comments on this particular video made by Tips. However, if you support what a content creator is doing and you're a fan of their work, I see no problem whatsoever with that person taking their work to Patreon and offering even further work for perhaps a monthly payment. Now, one of the reasons, obviously, that you're going to laugh at is why I'm so pro Patreon is at some point I'm going to be starting a Patreon account, and I might be reaching out to you guys and asking you, if you enjoy this podcast, to possibly come across and check out what I'm doing on Patreon. But the main reason I'm bringing up this post is just to talk about content creators for a moment. And I realize that, take this with a grain of salt perhaps, because I am a content creator and you think that I might have too big of a horse in this race. However, I just want to talk about YouTubers, podcasters, streamers. How do they affect your take on a game? Do you even watch YouTube clips? Some people were commenting on Tips' Reddit thread, "Who are you?" And that might be understandable, because some people might just not watch YouTube or watch a lot of it. And obviously, even if you do watch a lot of it, you might not come across a lot of the content creators out there. You might just be focused on one or two people. But also, we all take our extracurricular content in different ways. If you're just trawling Reddit and the WoW Classic forums, well, that might be the way in which you get your content. The question is, how much do we allow a game to become a part of our lives when we're not playing it? I know personally that I watch a lot of this stuff. That's why this podcast actually exists. I was watching so much YouTube, not actually playing the game, but I was just getting my hype on and just watching video after video and coming across a lot of these creators, and I cracked. And I was like, I want to get in on this. I want to be part of the conversation. And that's why I'm here talking to you now. So how much of that stuff do you take in? Obviously, you're listening to this podcast. Do you listen to other podcasts? Do you watch every Warcraft video you can find on YouTube? I know that's what I basically do most nights. But who do you love and why? Is it Asmongold, Preach, Bellular, Tips, Super Soaker, someone like Alex Sensual, who seems to cop a little bit of flack online? I mean, I even actually had a bit of a tongue-in-cheek reference to Alex Sensual the other day on a forum, but it fell short of a shot across the bow. It wasn't anything too harsh. But Alex Sensual still gets his views in spite of the flack that he gets online, and that must be for a reason. What I did on the website this week, guys, is I put up a poll as to who you might want to hear from in relation to this podcast. What I wanted to start doing is I want to start reaching out to some of these content creators and interviewing them on this show. I want you listeners to get a deeper insight into who these people are, why they're creating content for you, and what it is about vanilla that they love so much, and any other aspect of vanilla WoW that they might want to shed more light on. I had Super Soaker message me the other day asking to be on the show, and I do plan to get him on in the future, amongst many other voices that I'd like to start reaching out to. Perhaps some of them are even listening to this show already. Guys, if any of you are content creators and you're listening to this podcast right now, please do hit me up on Twitter or email and let me know if there's something that we can work out in terms of you coming on the show and talking to the listeners of Countdown to Classic, because I know a lot of them would love to hear from you. Anyway, with all of that being done now, it's time for anger management. Each episode, Countdown to Classic comes to you with some of the angriest posts I've found throughout the forums through the week in relation to the subject matter that we have just covered. Now, This week, I am mixing it up a little bit because I found a post on the Classic WoW subreddit titled, "For 2 months in vanilla, an orc rogue named Angui camped Menethil Harbour every day. He killed lobies relentlessly, then screenshotted the salt from whispers and general chat. Behold, the legend of Angui." And this was put up by user Thumb5Up. Now, this post blew up on the subreddit, and it absolutely caught my eye because of that. And it was a really, really interesting story that I wasn't aware of in any way, that maybe some of you were. Now, the actual player behind Angui also did an AMA on Reddit that wasn't overly interesting. It just kind of confirmed a few things about how he played the character, just in terms of, yes, it was only him that played on the account. Yes, he played for about 8 to 10 hours a day. And yes, he kind of came across like how you would expect someone who did this kind of thing to come across as. But these screenshots are a thing of beauty. So again, this guy just camped at Menethil Harbour every day for a very, very, very long time and just ganked Alliance players who are trying to level up through the area or visit Menethil Harbour. So what I want you to do now is sit back and relax for a very special edition of Anger Management. I'm going to read out a fair few of these chat entries and whispers, but just keep in mind that these were all Alliance players griping after having just been taken down by this celebrity ganker. Here we go. "I was just fishing. You know, if I could catch a fish and slap you with it so you smell like the pussy that you are, then I would. Really? I hope you die a painful death, preferably in flames, and all of your family goes with you and your line stops for good with you. But it's too much trouble to type that so often, so for now, I simply say, I hope you die. Who else here would torture Angui to death if we knew where he lived? Go back to your mother's womb. Suck my huge fat chode, you little dill muffin. You couldn't get laid if you paid your mum for it. You really like to fuck with people, don't you? Because you know when I level, I'm going to rail your ass just like I did to your mum. And it's not going to hurt because you're loose. Anyone heard of this Angui guy? I heard he blows goats. And I do like this one because sometimes Angui got requests. It goes like this. Can you hunt down and kill Whitney for me? She's a real bitch and a loot-whoring cockrocket. And I've saved the best for last, guys, and it goes as follows. I'm not going to sit around like the rest of the little bitch submissive tards and let you do that without me telling you what the fuck I think of your pathetic ass. I work my ass off, and when I come home, instead of watching TV, I play WoW. I only have like 6 hours to play per night, and I don't need to deal with your loser ass ganking me, you fuck. You know what, prick? Get a fucking life. That's so good. He only had like 6 hours to play per night. Jesus Christ. Sorry we can't get you more hours to play, buddy. But anyway, I really enjoyed The Legend of Angui, and those I do highly recommend you go through that thread and have a read of some of those whispers if you weren't aware of this, because it was really good fun. But anyway, with that, we'll now move on to winners and losers.
It wasn't going to be easy, but they've won it.
Each week, I bring to you some of the winners of the week, being the most thoughtful, insightful, or funniest posts that I've come across in all my time through the forums through the week. Now, there's a few co-winners that I bring you today because I stumbled upon a forum post titled the following: Pro Changes, Assemble Here. Now, this post attracted, as some of you might expect, a lot of trolls and a lot of people fucking with the original poster. Some of those responses actually got pretty funny, as the original poster was trying to obviously rally some pro-changer people and make a safe place for suggested changes to WoW Classic. Some of the no-changes crowd obviously got on board and started to fuck with people there. I bring you 5 responses that really, really made me laugh, and they're all co-winners in my eyes for the week. It starts with user Nakadashi, who says the following: Changes I want. Demon Hunters. Elin from Terra. Elin Demon Hunters. Premium Gasher with skins for my armor. More skanky armor. Nerf Artie because it takes no skill. The next one was from user Bonryu630 Ace, who we've heard from before on this podcast. He says, I want Free orange gear. Epic mounts at 10. Flying in Stranglethorn Vale. Space goats. Big crits. No more resist gear. And 5-man raids. Next we have user Vafar, who says, I want a fabulous flying unicorn mount to go with the blood elf I'd like to make in Classic. I'd also like for them to just remove mana from every class and put a big button in the middle of the screen so I can mindlessly click my way to victory. If I just had to click on the map and tell my character what its next objective is so it moved itself, that'd be great. Ooh, can we also get a fluffy bunny cuddle pile in Silvermoon? Next user was Dialog, who said this. Okay, here goes. Flying mounts, LFR, lots of welfare epics, free spec changes, ability to change into any class you want while in combat, free bottle of scotch with every month of subscription purchased, gnome mounts, death knights with healing specs, Pokemon battles, an MMO inside the game called World of Warcraft, should include several expansions, including World of Warcraft, the Battle for Azeroth, Tinder integration, an in-game web browser with access to the World of Warcraft Classic forums. I expect this will all be fully developed and released no later than July 2018. And finally, user Cthulhu, who says the following. Hairless Tuesdays, a topless breastplate, can openers, heroic reputation with my diametrically opposed faction and class, brittle cream in the barbershops, free dental hygiene for all jawless undead, epic failure stones at all raid and dungeon entrances, a zone that causes leveling to run backwards, Judy's tiny head, all gnomes to be named Tighty Whitey. I loved all of those posts, and they're all co-winners in my eyes. I will always reward smartasses who are intelligent, funny, and not particularly nasty. So I do enjoy all of those posts. Now, as we have winners, there has to be a loser, and I'm going to suggest that the loser is the person who started that thread, not for starting the thread, but for not expecting to be bombarded with trolls. Now, just in saying that, a bit of addendum. I know we've just had a bit of fun at the expense of the changes crowd, and I know I've said before that I do lean no changes, but I must admit, look, really guys, I've noticed the more and more I do this podcast, some of the very mild, non-game breaking quality of life changes being advocated for are starting to sort of have me at least look at them a little bit more. I'm hearing people out more. I still want Classic as it was, but when earlier I would dismiss some of these arguments very easily, I'm now really starting to hear people out. And that's really the purpose of this podcast and what I want is more mature discourse about what we want with World of Warcraft Classic. Not just yelling each other down all the time, even though I did just glorify trolling a little bit, but I'm not what I'm trying to do. It's all in the name of comedy. But it is nice to sort of have people's minds opened up a little bit more by some of the debate that is going on in the forums. And now it's time for the final segment of the show, Memory Lane. Each week, I ask listeners of Countdown to Classic to get back to me with some of your funniest memories from Vanilla WoW. And the first submission comes from a listener named Armadillo, who emailed the show and also had some very kind words to say about the new logo, which again, I want to give a big thank you to listener Brandon, who's on Twitter on the handle at BNTheWilderness, for that amazing fan-made logo. I've gotten a lot of nice words about that. Thanks again, Brandon. You're a legend. But Armadillo got in touch with me by email this week, and I do encourage all of you, if you've got any stories, please do email them to feedback@countdowntoclassic.com or direct message me on Twitter. Now, Armadillo's story goes as follows. The Ahn'Qiraj war effort is a well-known event, but one small part few ever talk about were the Qiraji obelisks that spread across the world. They weren't particularly notable, but they had a few silithids around them and would periodically cause adverse effects to players that would get too close. My guild decided to find out what these obelisks were all about. We'd go from obelisk to obelisk, killing and looting everything, seeing if anything special would happen. The obelisks would wreak havoc, usually in the form of mind-controlling a raid member or two. Our guildmaster had the unfortunate luck of being the target of mind control at almost every single obelisk. This delighted the guild clown, who would immediately kill our mind-controlled guildmaster at every opportunity. It was all in good fun and spurred their rivalry. We were in Tannerus when the guild clown said he had to go AFK for a few minutes, then /followed the guildmaster while he was away. By this point, the guildmaster had died half a dozen times by the clown's hand, and he wanted to figure out a way to get back at him. But how? He thought a moment. "I have an idea, everyone. Let's go to the coast," he said. We reached the Tannerus beach, then he jumped into the water with the auto-following clown in tow. As he swam into the depths, he said, "Warlocks, can you give us all underwater breathing except him?" So there we were at the bottom of the ocean, giggling like schoolgirls waiting for a reaction. Suddenly, the clown started swimming upward, making a mad dash for the surface. But the timing was too perfect, and he drowned before touching the surface. You guys are jerks. Voice chat burst into laughter, and the guildmaster's revenge was complete. I still have the screenshot from July 8, 2006. And I do thank Armadil for that one, and he sent me the screenshot, and I will try to remember to put that one up on the website for all of you if you're interested. Now, my second story actually comes from Armadil again. And as I say, guys, if you send it to me, and if it's decent, it'll make the cut. It's in. And Armadil says the following. While not exactly quote-unquote funny, I hope a story of unexpected triumph will be entertaining all the same. And I'm with you, Armadil. Let's hear about some unexpected triumph. Armadil says the following. I was a founding member of the top Horde PvP guild of our server. We dominated the battlegrounds. We had a few rivals here and there, but our biggest was the top PvE Alliance guild, which would queue up when it wasn't raid night. It was a friendly rivalry, but as time went on, we found our tactics and strategies could only go so far. It became apparent that they could overpower us with their gear progression. One of the most notable examples was their main tank, a gnome warrior in full tier 2 armor and Thunder Fury, whom we nicknamed Deathball due to his appearance. Paired with his pocket healers, he was an unstoppable killing machine. On one fateful night in Warsong Gulch, it was a dreaded 2-2 stalemate. We had their flag and they had ours. Both sides were camping in their respective bases. It was late at night, an hour into the fight, and everyone was exhausted. I was stealthed in the enemy base, relaying intel to my incoming reinforcements. Their entire team is at the graveyard. The druid has the flag. My heart skipped a beat as time felt like it slowed down. Druid dropped the flag, I reported. I see Deathball approach the flag to pick it up. I drop out of stealth and pop sprint. I spam right-click like a madman. The Horde flag was returned to its base. The Horde wins. No one saw me pull it off but the Alliance. But I still felt like a champion that night. Stealing a flag right under the noses of 10 enemy players was amazing. And these are the stories of triumph that I love hearing on Countdown to Classic because it all makes us reminisce. We can't wait to get back into the battlegrounds. I have no doubt that a lot of us dabbled in some form of PvP, and stories like that might encourage you to want to get back to it as soon as we can. But the final story I've got for Memory Lane, I actually cherry-picked from the Classic WoW official forums. And this was from a user called AV Lamu, who says the following. I have a funny story about the first time I encountered an elitist jerk. I was just walking into Orgrimmar and this player called Wild Boy just opened trade and gave me 50 gold without saying a word. I just thought, wow, what a cool guy. People in this game sure are nice and cool. I then whispered him saying, thanks man, this is really going to help out a lot. Can I add you to my friends list? Sure, scrub, he said. And after that, I would just shortly talk to him over the course of the next week. And eventually, I came to find out he'd lost a bet. And his end of the bet was to find the most pathetic loser in the game and give them 50 gold. And that pathetic loser was me, lol. Thanks, Wild Boy, you jerk. It was also the start of an epic rivalry, lol. I miss little parts of the game like that. And hearing that story again reminded me of all the weird little things that you would see in your daily life in Classic WoW. Weird little chats, weird little interactions that just made you scratch your head. And we're such a niche community that we have our own subculture and people do jerky things just like that. And it's all part of the experience. And once again, everyone, I can't wait to get back to it. But that's been Countdown to Classic for this Monday. Just before I sign off, however, I really do want to say many, many, many more thanks to all of you who are listening right now. You are the reason that this podcast is kicking on as it is. I'm coming at you twice a week now, every Monday and Wednesday. And if you're enjoying the podcast, you downloading it and you listening all the way through like you are right now is what's going to keep more and more episodes coming. So much has happened since I last spoke to you guys. Just since Wednesday, the downloads have been going bonkers. After the release of episode 4, there were over 500 downloads within 12 hours of that episode dropping. The podcast got over 1,000 downloads within the next 3 days of that episode dropping. This podcast is now about 2 weeks old, everyone, and we're over 2,000 downloads in total. People are listening and it's warming my heart. Over 50 countries worldwide. Sweden, like I said, I see you. Canada, I see you. Germany, I see you. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and I'll get to all the other countries as we go along. I swear to God, guys, I love giving shout outs, but thank you so much. Certain states within America, Cali, I see you. Michigan, shout out to my neckbeards who got in touch with me through the week. I see you guys. Thank you so much. And please don't ever be shy in saying hello. Anyway, guys, as far as the future of the show is going, everyone, as I mentioned, I am going to be starting up a Twitch account. I will be streaming myself going through World of Warcraft from scratch all over again on the retail version of the game. Please do come along and play when I get that up and running. I think within the next week that's going to be happening, but I'll give you more details through the show. Also, as I mentioned, I will be starting up a Patreon of my own. As I talked about Patreon earlier in this episode with regards to content creators, obviously it's something that does come with the territory at times. I am going to be offering extra content to those of you who are interested, and I would love to see some of you sign up, but more details on that later. For now, thank you so much for listening, everyone, again, and I can't wait to see you on Wednesday. Bye.